Okay, great. I just wanted to get just a sign from everyone. Can you hear me okay? And are you able to see me okay? And see the slides that I've put up? Okay, great. I'm hearing yes from Melissa, from Daniel, from Ryan. That's awesome. All right. So what I'm going to do is, I know more people are going to start hopping in over the next little bit, but let's start going through the slide. We have 90 minutes together today, and we have a lot to go through. We want to, start with kind of an overview of community building, and then we will, spend most of our time in a panel. But, I think that the first thing that we want to do is just, introduce myself. My name is Giulio Terra, and I am one of the founders of Launch Studio. And, before Launch Studio, I worked at Kickstarter many years, leading their team that was responsible for finding creators around the world who are working on interesting projects and getting them to launch those projects on Kickstarter. So, just a little bit about how to get the most out of today. We're going to cover a lot. We're going to have a conversation that's wide ranging as far as community goes. And these are just some tips for you to get the most out of the next, 80 minutes or so that we'll spend together. The first thing, as much as possible, try to reduce your distractions. I'm just going to quickly move this camera here. Sorry. Try to reduce your distractions as much as possible. That's just going to help you. I know that nowadays, where we're living in COVID times, probably staying at home with our partners, with our pets and whatnot, can be a little hard. But do your best for that. Stay until the end. Part of the reason why is, we're going to cover a lot of things. We're going to go through a lot of different topics, and you never know when that little nugget of wisdom might come up that can really make an impact for you. But also at the very end, we're going to have a Q&A with our panelists, which is an amazing opportunity for you to ask them questions on this topic that have been, on your mind. Be an active participant. We're going to ask you questions sometimes for you to share things in the comments or to take part in small polls. And, it's really, I think it's helpful for everyone, I think, if you're actively engaged throughout the event. As I mentioned, at the end, we're going to have a Q&A. And after that, we'll share a little bit more info about Launch Studio for those of you who are interested. And I think, the first poll that I wanted to put out there just to get us started is, I want to get a sense of your familiarity with Kickstarter. I know most of you haven't created projects, but I'd love to just get a sense, how many of you have backed projects and how many projects have you backed? So I just put the poll out there. When you have a moment, please, just drop in your answer. Some of you might never have backed a project. Some of you might be like me, who's addicted and backs tons of projects, and probably most of you fall somewhere in the middle there. So I'm going to leave this up for a few minutes as I'll continue on to the next slide. So the next thing I wanted to just mention, it's Lunar New Year already for one of our panelists who's based in Hong Kong. So I just wanted to call out Happy Lunar New Year to everyone. I think in New York, we're still 12 hours away or so from that, but just wanted to shout that out. And now let's quickly go through our agenda. The way that we're going to spread out this rest of our time together is we are going to start with panelist intros. I will actually intro the panelists now. You won't actually get to see them until we actually have our conversation in a little bit. Then after the panelist intro, I want to give a little bit of talk about what is community from the perspective of a Kickstarter project, and why does it matter? I know we talk a lot about it mattering, but I think it's important to really understand why it does matter. Then we'll jump into the meat of our time today, which will be the panel itself. After that, we will do the Q&A session. And as I said, the more info. So let me get started. So what you're seeing here is what you're going to see is I'll introduce each panelist by showing their Kickstarter video. And so we're really thrilled to have Madelin Woods joining us. And Madelin is the founder of Burrito Pop, and Burrito Pop is this really awesome device that essentially creates a burrito elevator of sorts that makes it possible for you to eat burritos with one hand without making a huge mess. And Madelin has a really amazing story where, the idea for this product came, a very long time ago when she was working out in the Bay Area. And it was a product that just, little by little evolved, and to the point where last year she finally, brought it to life. And we'll get into a little bit of her story during the panel. We're also thrilled to have David joining us today. David is the CEO and founder of Argineering, and their Kickstarter project that they launched was the first product from Argineering, which is a really amazing motion kit that helps, essentially makes robotics something that is very accessible for any photographer or videographer to use to create these really amazing animations and content that is impossible to do without having the assistance of these kind of robotics. And David, his background is this marriage of engineering and arts, and that's how he came to start this company and to launch his first product, the RG Kit. And the RG Kit, and I forgot to mention, actually, I meant to mention that, Madelin was able to raise about $35,000 to bring to life Burrito Pop from, about a little bit under 500 backers. And David, for his awesome RG Kit, he was able to raise $200,000 from a community also of around 500 backers. Now, lastly, but of course, definitely not leastly, I want to introduce you to Nikki Chan. Nikki Chan is the VP of Customer Experience at Looking Glass Factory. And Looking Glass Factory is a company that has been on this path for many years now to create holographic displays. It's really interesting. The first time I met, the team of Looking Glass Factory was in 2013, when they had made their first step towards building a holographic display. But at that time, that first step, all that it involved was a volumetric print. So essentially a print that was, essentially a 3D print. And since then, they've taken step by step, to creating a low resolution three-dimensional display, to now, just recently creating a really affordable personal portrait holographic display that you can have on your desk. And, their Kickstarter project, they had an amazing success, raised over $2.5 million from over 8,000 backers. So, next up, we're going to talk a little bit about what is community. And, oh, sorry. Let me just, it seems like my presentation just went, give me 1 second. Let me just get that up again. My apologies. There we go. Okay, here we are again. So we're gonna now dive a little bit into what is community. So, in this book, this is an awesome book about community building. It's a book called Get Together that was written by the founders of People and Company. They define community very broadly as simply groups of people who keep coming together over what they care about. And, while this definition is great and it does define in a clear way what community is, it's a little bit too broad for what we mean when we are talking specifically about community from the lens of a Kickstarter project. So this type of community of, groups of people coming together over what they care about really does matter. I mean, if you're somebody who's, launching a project around a music instrument, of course, you should engage with musicians online. You should engage with the people who are passionate about creating music, about using instruments of different types to create music. So these communities that are defined by this quote do matter to the work that you're going to do if you're launching a Kickstarter project. But through the lens of a Kickstarter project, here's what we're really talking about when we refer to community. We're talking about a group of people who are bringing together, who you are bringing together because they care or have an interest for your product or your work. And that's why within the realm of Kickstarter, when people talk about community, this is just often a shorthand to refer to an email list, a social media following, or a Facebook group. So let's. I'm just going to quickly now wrap up that poll that I put up a little bit ago, so that I can go on to the next poll. So it looks like most people who joined us here today have backed a couple of projects. There's a handful like me who are addicted, a few who back no projects at all, and also like another handful that have backed a decent number of projects. So now let's go on. So the next poll that I want to ask you to fill out while I'm covering the next slides is, what was your motivation for attending today? Like, I want to understand, are you somebody who's actually working on an idea now that you hope to launch in the future? Are you actively working on a product that you want to launch? Do you have a campaign that's live right now? Are you somebody who provides services and so forth? So why don't you fill that out while we continue here? So I'm going to now talk about a few reasons why community matter. I think the first one is that it extends the time frame for finding your audience. The reality is, most creators, most people have a hunch for who the audience is for the product that they're creating. But the reality is often that hunch is wrong, or that hunch is very broad, and not as useful as it could be if you're able to drill down a little bit further. And once a crowdfunding campaign launches, things go by really fast. You don't have the time to, at that point, do the kind of experimentation that you want to be able to do in order to really find your audience. So this ability to extend the time that you have to find your audience is really, really crucial. The next thing is, you get better acquainted. You have this time to get better acquainted with your audience. One of the things that's all too common with entrepreneurs and designers is that they suffer from what is called the curse of the expert, which is that they are so deeply immersed in their work that they are often blinded to the needs and the interests of people who are not familiar with their work. They have a hard time often communicating about their product and what they're doing with people who are not experts at that, because they might even use language that is different than what people who are not experts would use. And so it's important to engage with your audience to really get acquainted with how they talk about your product and what they really care about that thing that you're creating, like what's most important to them. Another thing that's really, crucial that building a community lets you do is that it helps you nurture interest and desire for the products that you're creating. And so, this is really crucial, because once a person signs up for your email list, that's not something like, oh, great, you have them signed up, that's your work is done. Like, that is an opportunity for you to get them, more excited about your work and more excited about the product that you're doing. And, this is really crucial to nurture these people's interests and keep them engaged so that you can actually take advantage of the next potential benefit of building a community, which is this possibility of creating real momentum on your launch day, by building a list of people and then, nurturing their interests so that that interest is matured when you launch to the point that those people are ready to pledge money to your project, to give you money so that they can get this product in the future. That is a really powerful way for you to build this possibility to create momentum on the first day. I mean, I think one of the things when you see Kickstarter projects, you often see them like blowing up big in a first day. You often don't realize all the hard work that went in to making that happen, because often that hard work, unless you already knew that company, and even if you did, often a lot of the work that company has been doing or that person has been doing is just not that visible. There isn't a place like a Kickstarter platform where you can go and see all that work. That work was happening in emails, was happening at physical events, was happening in social media, and all these different places. So just really quickly turning to the poll. Thank you all for answering that. So it seems like that's great. Most of you are actively working on a product that they want to launch. A few are in the very early stages and just have an idea. And also another handful is just curious to learn more about this topic. Okay, great. So there's two more reasons why, building a community before you launch really matters. So the other reason why it matters is, it's a powerful way to even continue to drive engagement with, people around your project once you launch, because the reality is you can continue to communicate with that community even after you launch. And you can use them as a place to test different messages. You can use them as a place to test different offers. So, of course, as much as you are trying to get as many of them out to support your project on the launch day, you still have a direct line of communication to these people throughout your campaign to try to get as many of these of them as possible to turn out and actually support what you're doing. And the final thing, I think so much of our conversation today is focused on the short-term benefits that a community can provide in helping you succeed on Kickstarter. But the reality is the benefit that a community can provide is much longer term than that. By nurturing that community, getting them to continue to care about what you're doing, and hopefully, a good number of them will pledge your project. They'll get your product. Like, this is, in an ideal sense, people that you are building a long-term relationship with. And of course, it's not like a relationship like a friend, but it's a relationship, the same way that we all have relationships with companies that create products that, make our lives easier, make our lives more pleasurable, add some type of quirk or interest to what we're doing. So whether it's a functional benefit they provide or an emotional benefit, we all do have relationships with companies that, make products that fit into our lives. And so that is all, really important too. And I think that is the ultimate goal, what you're trying to do with building an email list or whatnot, is creating this actually resource that's valuable in a very, very long-term, from a very, very long-term view. So, all right. So now let us look at the, okay, I just shared the results of the last poll. I'm going to just do one final poll before we jump in to the panel, which is just getting a sense, most of you are here today because you are building a community yourself. You're on the path to launch a project yourself or a product yourself. So I wanted to get a sense, how far along are you in the community building process? I just launched a poll. So, I'm trying to get a sense, have you just started it? Are you even just still in the process of thinking of starting it, or in the process of setting things up? Have you already begun collecting emails? Have you already created a pretty solid community? Let us know, where you're at with that process. Okay, great. Everybody's answering there. I'm going to just give it a minute to get a few more answers, and then we will invite I'm going to make our panelists visible here, and we can start our conversation. So yeah, it seems like, if there's a handful of you that haven't started yet, a few setting up the infrastructure. I'm going to end the poll and I'll just share the results. A few setting up the infrastructure, a handful that are actively building their lists, and there's also a handful that are already pretty far along. That's awesome. You are the lucky ones, the ones of you who are pretty far along. Okay, so now, sorry, just one last thing before I invite just kind of a summary of the process at a high level of building a community for your Kickstarter project. This process, again, it involves finding people, establishing connections with those people. And this means, by establishing connection means like you've resonated with them enough that they're willing to engage with you by following you, by giving you their email address. Then you want to nurture their interest. You want to nurture their desire. And this ultimately is what will allow you to hopefully be able to motivate them to take action when you launch. And, the ultimate holy grail, the building relationships that really kind of provide value both ways for the long term. Awesome. So now we're going to go to the creator panel. I'm actually going to stop screen sharing, and I'm going to now invite all of our panelists to unmute yourselves and to turn on your videos so that we can now proceed with. Awesome. So let's just give them 1 minute.
It says I'm unable to start video.
Oh, okay. Sorry, then must be my fault. Let me.
There we go.
Okay, David, probably my fault with you too. There we go. Now, all right, awesome. Now we have everyone here. So yeah, I'm gonna just move my camera over to my other computer so that I can be looking at all of you directly. Okay, so I think first I don't think people know you all by your face. So I'm going to first, Madeline, do you want to wave everyone so everyone knows? There's Madeline, David. I think people will since you're the only other guy here, I think people will know, and that's Nikki.
Everyone.
So I'm thrilled to have Madeline, David, and Nikki with me, and part of the reason why. Yes.
I think a few folks in the chat says they can't see us.
Oh, okay. Let me see what's going on.
Now
they do.
Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. So the reason why we specifically curated these three creators to join us today is because, one, we wanted to get a range of different campaign scales. Like, we wanted to get creators who have done really awesome community work, but at different scales. So we have Madeline, who ran a really successful campaign for an independent product called the Burrito Bop, where as I mentioned, she had raised $35,000 or so, a little bit more than that, from around 500 backers. We have David, who raised a little over $200,000 from also around 500 backers, because they have a much more complex, expensive product. And then we have Nikki, whose team has raised over $2.5 million from thousands of backers. And I think the reason why that's so important to us is because I think you'll see some threads and some differences in how they engaged their communities. And I think those threads and differences are both part of the scale, but also, I think it's to show that, like, there are different ways to build community, and there are different strategies that have worked for different creators. It's not that there are, of course, some things that are core to all of their strategies, but you'll see as we talk about all these, as we kind of dive into the different parts of their strategies, how there isn't just a checklist that you can follow. Some of it is you have to kind of figure out on your own what's the best way to connect with your audience. And so let's start just by examining, like, what is the importance of community. What was the contribution that community had to all of your projects? I would love to get a sense for, how did this work that you did before you launch contribute to the success of your efforts? So, Madeline, why don't we start with you, and then we'll kind of go give all three of you a chance to touch on that.
Yeah, definitely. So hi, everybody. I'm Madeline. Community, it was actually something that was really huge for us in a number of ways that I just completely didn't even think about ahead of time. We started building up our campaign list, I would say about, we started building it up in April and we launched in September. So it was like 5 or 6 months before we kicked off the campaign that we started really thinking about, like, where are we going to start engaging people? Like, how are we going to just start drum up hype around this? This is a project that I had been working on sort of on the side for 8 years. So I had this like sort of Katamari of like friends who were sort of like, when are you putting this on Kickstarter? So it just sort of like snowballed a little bit as we went. And by the time we started building, we started getting some interest on Twitter. We started building up our newsletter, and just started getting, I did a couple talks where I just sort of talked about the process, and that really helped as well. And community was really, really important for us for a number of reasons. One, it helped us have a really successful launch day. We got over 171% of our launch goal or our target goal on day one. So in the first 24 hours, like, it was just totally crazy. and we hit 100% in just the first 5 hours of the campaign. So all of that was because we had sort of prepared ahead of time, sort of prepping our backers like, hey, we're going live on this day, like be, the first one in, we've got early bird specials. And it really just helped us like kind of get over that line. There's a couple things I didn't realize with that as well, which like Kickstarter has a lot of like really interesting algorithms that, if you do hit those target goals really quickly, they bump you up in that algorithm, and then you become visible in other parts of the Kickstarter site. But there were so many intangible benefits of community as well. One, I just didn't realize how much like joy like this project could spread throughout the world, and just having everybody just kind of like text me and message me and say like, oh my god, this is so neat, like it just fuels you to continue doing more, and continues building up that momentum throughout the campaign, and that's contagious, and that's that's the way that community builds. So it's really, really important to just pour a lot of love into the people that love you and love your project, and it just totally builds upon itself.
Awesome. Thanks, Madeline. And David, what about your experience? Can you share a little bit about for ArgiKit, the importance and
sure.
the community had?
Okay, sure. So actually, building a community for us was, or I think building a community is something very important, not only for a Kickstarter campaign, but in general for any company or any startup. So actually building community, it's not only to have a numbers of backers at the first day. This is something that, as Madeline said, it was very impressive how you see all this community is converting to backers in the first day. But also, we have been running a campaign before Kickstarter for around a month or a couple of months. And during this, we have been running this campaign on Instagram because this was like the best medium for our customers. Our customers are videographers, designer, artists, and actually everyone who follow, who comment on our social media, we go to his professional account, to his Instagram account, we check his portfolio, his work, what he's interested in, and all these insights helped us to gather more information and to develop more the product, and so it really helped us on developing more the product, adding more value to our customer, and on the other side, it helped us a lot in converting all this community into backers and into like real sales during Kickstarter campaign. So building a community is, I would say, it's very important while you are building your community to be very adaptive and you listen to them.
Awesome. And so Nikki, what about you guys on at Looking Glass?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks, Julia, for obviously having us speak to this. I think communities actually has been super important for us. I've been with the company since 2016 now, and I think you've known Sean even longer. And since then, we've obviously run a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, and I think to me, to build this community, it took 6 to 7 years as well, because our community has been following us throughout, from the very first volumetric prints that you just mentioned, the L3D cubes. So we have people in our community who have owned every project that we've created on Kickstarter, and so I think for us, especially for this project, was really special to us because we basically tripled the size of our existing community with this Looking Glass portrait. I'm excited to go more into details in the next hour.
Yeah, and we'll dive into each of the different areas, and I think a place for us to kind of go next, like now that we've kind of talked high level, is what were the channels like? Let's explore a little bit. What were the channels that you used to engage community? I know that across the board, email is the primary channel that creators use to engage their community. And there are many reasons for that. And I think it was something that was important to all three of you. But I know that all three of you used as a secondary channels, like very different channels, or not very different. There was some overlap, but it definitely is not like email was the only thing that really mattered to all of you. Like you guys use different channels to engage. For some of you, different channels were really powerful for actually converting, people to pledge to your project. So let's explore a little bit from each of you. So David, starting with you, what were kind of like the core ways that you engage with community, nurture their interest during the lead up to your launch?
Okay, sure. So at the beginning, when we had in our very early day of our prototypes and product, we sent them to a lot of people. I think to around 20 designers, 20 videographers around the world in different countries, to see what they are going to do with the kit and to give us like a feedback on the product. So this was our first interaction with the community. It was like very small. It was like 20 people, but then they send us, they tried the kit, they give us a feedback, and then they send us a content, and they send us videos about what they have been done with Argikit. And what was really interesting in this, that they did this without asking them to do this, or without asking them to like to video shoot the product or to send like a review for it. So we took this content, and then with this content we launched a campaign on our Instagram account, and through this campaign we were leading our community to our website to subscribe on our mailing list. And then this is where we started the real engagement, through emails, through their comments on Instagram, through every single touching point during the process. From they see the ad, then they follow the Instagram, they like subscribe. We did a lot of surveys to understand more what they want, how they want to use our product, what they want to do with it. And also another part was like in building a community, we worked with an agency to help us in the digital marketing.
Yeah.
And one of the criteria that was to select these agencies was we were searching for agencies who has like the design and the creative aspect is something core in their businesses, because this is something that was very core to our business, to our product, and we want to convey this, and we want to choose our partners who have the same vision and the same core values, so we can spread this in the right way to our customers. Because I would say, for example, if our product is for videographers, we cannot target all the videographers, but we are going to start with the videographers who share the same beliefs, who share the same values of our company. So building a community is something that you need to communicate your core values, your core messages very clear, and to the right people who share the same principles.
And David, I have two quick questions for you, just to add on. The first one is, I know that once you guys had people on your email list, you guys use a few different ways to engage these people in a deeper way, to do this kind of nurturing type work. And I know, would you mind just sharing a little bit about those different channels? I know Facebook groups is one of the things that you guys use. I'd love to just hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So we have been using, as you said, we have a Facebook group, like a VIP Facebook group for our early adopters or early community, this is where we share the new stuff. The first thing we share it in this group, and then after that, I would say we did a an online webinar or an online workshop with them. And I would say creating online events or online webinar, this is something to engage a big community. This is something that takes time, takes like maybe years to, like, for example, like months or around 1 year with regular events, online events, to create this momentum. So I would say if someone before a Kickstarter campaign want to do this, maybe it's better to do it with other people or other people in your community. So to use to have like more communities or more people, for example, people who follow you and people who follow this influencer or who follow this person who is joining your event. Also, we were using our this emailing list. We were like sending them, like, for example, some updates about the developing of the product, some updates about the developing of our Kickstarter page, our for example, some sneak peeks from our Kickstarter video. So we're like trying to engage them and to really make them join our company, but in a virtual way.
Awesome. No, that's great. That's great. Super helpful. And so let's go now a little bit to Madelin and just kind of hear from you, Madelin, like what was the way, I know that for you, email was also important, but I think, Twitter was the other platform that I think resonated for you as well. So could you share a little bit more about how you use these channels?
Yeah, definitely. So we definitely built up a list over email, and a big piece of that was just sort of building up a waiting list of people's email addresses and periodically sending them updates about, like, hey, here's where we're at in the process, or like, hey, we're shooting the video this week, or, something like that, just kind of keeping people up to date. I also used email. I did like a weird thing where I just like went through my whole contact list in Gmail of everybody I've ever emailed in my entire life. There were like, 4,000 people or something. I sort of culled that down to like 500 and just blasted them out and was like, hey guys, like probably haven't talked to you in, 20 years or something, but, like I'm working on this crazy project. This was everything from like high school English teachers to like parents of ex-boyfriends or whatever. And the response was just like really incredible. Excuse me. So email was really important from that front, and just kind of like gathering that sort of mode of communication. We also used that during and after the campaign with our sort of like co-posting out like our Kickstarter updates to like our email list as well. But Twitter was actually huge for us, especially on launch day. We had like, I don't think I've ever used Twitter that much in my entire life. Like it was crazy. Like people were like posting about it, retweeting it, like just having like the weirdest discourse. And it was just really awesome to kind of see, people engaging with it like that. And that's something that I had sort of anticipated a little bit, because earlier in the year, around May, I had tweeted just kind of the story in like a tweet thread, sort of randomly, like, and this is one of the things that like kicked off, like, doing the actual Kickstarter. Like somebody had posted a burrito and a mug, and I was like, boy, let me tell you, like what we've done over here. So I posted this whole like tweet thread story, and it just got like hundreds and thousands of like likes and retweets and whatnot. And I was like, oh crap, like this is a thing. So I sort of like, I don't know, had that like sense that Twitter was going to be like really big for us, just in terms of like, people, I don't know, commenting and engaging and whatnot. So we wound up using that during and throughout the campaign to post updates. And then after the campaign, it's actually been really interesting, because I've sort of noticed this shift towards Instagram as people are starting to share photos of their burrito pops. Like so many people every single day, you know, post pictures of like their kids or like, I just got my burrito pop and blah, blah, blah. And like, you know, people are kind of carrying it around and like going hiking with it. Like it's something that, you know, has really just kind of become part of like this, you know, I don't know, this like very like visual part of their life at this point. And so a lot of those have kind of come from Instagram, and then we, you know, we repost them to Twitter and whatnot. And it's just like a really neat way to share that information. There was one other channel that I used just because of where I'm at like all day, which is Slack. I'm probably in about 25 Slack channels, just all sorts of communities all over the place. And there were a couple channels that were just like really rallying behind this. And they were just like, yeah. So like I had a couple folks who were just like my little, you know, like, you know, hype squad or something. And they were like, all right, let's go like post this out. And so it was really neat just to kind of like find people in those different places and you know, just engage them in other spots where people are, you know, posting projects and helping each other out with community building. But I would say like definitely, so it kind of shifted like throughout the campaign, like where people were engaging the most. But yeah, everything from email, Twitter, Instagram, Slack, newsletters, we kind of ran the gamut there. Oh, you're on mute, Julia.
And Nikki, I know for you, for your team, I know Twitter was also a big one. And I do want to call out that, you know, the primacy of Twitter, I think in both for Looking Glass and for Burrito Pop, for Nikki's team and for Madelin's team, that is, you know, is an outlier. You know, but I thought it was interesting because, you know, it shows the power of Twitter for engaging in conversations. And if you are able to engage in conversations, it can really drive a lot of engagement, especially when you have this time to build interest beforehand. And so, Nikki, share a little bit about that, the experience from your team. And I would love to also, though, one of the things I think your team does a lot is real world events to engage community. So I'd love for you to touch on a little bit how your team thinks about that from a community building channel standpoint.
Yeah, I definitely think it's good to raise that, you know, like I think, like you mentioned, Twitter is definitely an anomaly. And David, we also worked with some digital agencies who, you know, on the first day of the campaign, when they saw where our referrals were coming from of people who backed the campaign, they were so surprised to see Twitter as being the third most referred traffic into our campaign. So definitely, you know, like take my words with a grain of salt. But I think what's super important here is just to, like, I would go to the mediums and the platforms where you think your communities are. And I mean this both online and like virtually and also physically. So Twitter has become this place where 3D creators in VR spaces, AR spaces, like, you know, they're all congregating there. And I think more so than Instagram or any other place on the internet. So naturally, we kind of found our place there. So over the few years, we've built up a really good both following, and we also follow some really great people. So being able to see what they see, engage with what they engage with is super important. So I think the algorithm is really working out for us there. And definitely back in 2018, when we first shipped our first Looking Glass product, I think that was when we were really like, oh, whoa, like Twitter really works for us, especially when people started getting their Looking Glass units and they started plugging them in and unboxing them. You know, they were sharing it on Twitter. And then what I really want to mention, and this crosses both the physical and virtual, is that about, you know, a good chunk of our community members are in Japan. And so, you know, pre-pandemic, our team would go there 2 to 3 times a year to engage with the community there with live events. You know, I think there was one time, and Janet had mentioned this, where you know, we went there for 7 days and we did a total of 9 in-person events. So, you know, they're tiring trips, but super fun. But what's really funny is Japan, like the people in Japan love Twitter as well. So, you know, developers in Japan, like Twitter is their main form of conversation, learning, engaging. People are Twitter. We went to a hackathon in Japan. We organized it with our Looking Glass Club in Japan. It wasn't started by us, but by a community member there. I think they have over 800 members now. But during the hackathon, everyone's name tag instead of their name has their Twitter handle. So they identify each other as their Twitter handle. So I think that's, you know, obviously pretty interesting. And yeah, live events, we used to go to a lot of them. We went to, I think almost 100 in a non-pandemic year. We would go to the same events every year. We'd go to some recurring ones. So like CES, AWE, we'd go to where we think our communities are, and you know, they would come and see us every year. We'd see the same people like 3 years in a row. They would attend the parties we host, and you know, over the years we get to know them more. You know, if we host something special, we'll invite them. So it just becomes this you know, having these recurring relationships are really special. Obviously, now that we can't, we've shifted into virtual events, and those have also become a really important tool, especially during our campaign, as a way to showcase our product and explain to people that it's here, this is it, like it exists, and here's how it works. Because not being able to do that was something that we were super concerned about before launching the product. It was a total, we were like, it's either gonna do well or not do well at all. People did not have the opportunity to see this in person as they normally would.
Awesome. And so before, as I get to the next question, I just wanted to let everybody know, all the attendees, like if you have a question for the Q&A session, you can start dropping those into the Q&A area on Zoom. So if you go to the bottom of the screen, there should be a bunch of icons, and one of them is Q&A. So just drop those in there. I saw somebody did raise their hands a few minutes ago. We're not taking any questions during the panel, just so we can get through as much as possible now. If you have a question, just that's the place to drop it in, and we'll start going through those in a little while. So the next thing I want to talk about, so we talked about like the channels that all the teams have used. Now let's talk a little bit about how do you get people into those channels? Like, what were strategies that you all used to get people to sign up for your email, to get people to join your Instagram or your Facebook groups? Let's chat a little bit about those. And so, Nikki, let's start with you. I think you guys had some interesting, were able to take advantage of some interesting things just happening in the world, which I think was pretty clever. So I'd love to hear a little bit about those strategies that you guys used to drive that interest.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so back in 2018, in our first Kickstarter, we went the route of a referral campaign. You hear about it a lot, and you're like, okay, let's do this. Let's run a contest. Let's give away like a certain number of product. And it went great. We got a lot of signups, but I don't think that those signups are necessarily people who necessarily at the end of the day would buy a product, and that sort of showed in the numbers as well. But it was fun, and the people who really wanted to win really went all out. But then they got a free product, so they actually didn't back the product at the end of the day. So there's a little funny thing going on there. But most recently, while we were trying to figure out how to do it for this campaign, I think definitely we got super lucky. So we launched on December 2nd, and in October, I think mid-October, Sony, which is this big company, decided to launch a light field display. Now, there's not a lot of holographic displays in the market, so Sony launching one is definitely big news. And we're like, okay, what can we do about this? So in about 2 weeks time, our team worked really quickly to pull together a campaign that we called the Welcome Sony Seriously campaign, where we wrote them a letter quite like the Apple versus IBM like posting in the newsletter back in the newspaper back in the 80s, where it's like, welcome to the game. We're glad someone's like finally decided to take holograms seriously. And so, we posted this on Twitter. We sent this out in our existing email campaign, in our email list. And, that really, really worked and became one of the core ways we built up a very not only like big list in the numbering in the, multiple thousands, but these people were super into it. Like they went to our website, they looked at it, and they're like, okay, they decided actively that they wanted to sign up for this and sort of wanted to like join this like movement, if you will. And so I think just in that 1 month before the campaign, that was super crucial that we just decided to act on something that we basically didn't plan for, but that really worked out for us.
Thanks for sharing that. And so, Madeline, I wanted to touch on a little bit of some of the work that you did to build, to find people before you launched. Specifically, I'd love to hear a little bit. You shared with me earlier about some of the Google ad testing that you did, about both to find people, but also to learn about the people who are your audience. Can you share a little bit about that strategy that you put to work?
Yeah, definitely. So early on in the campaign, or I guess before the campaign, when we were still just kind of putting everything together, I had some hunches on who our target audience might be. And I wanted to just kind of test those out and help that, use that to help, define our creative and define our messaging and just kind of figure out like, let's get a really good picture of like, who are these people that like love burrito pops and, that are just like totally like burrito fanatics? Like who's going to be the most excited about this? And we had a few different hunches. We were like, maybe it's, people who are eating Chipotle at lunch, or, my kind of sort of sense was like, it's like tech workers who like go down to food trucks at, during the day, because that was like my experience. Or like my dad, like putting a burrito in his thermos, like going to his like landscaping job. Or like my little brother who just thinks burritos are hilarious and would just like, give this to all of his friends. So I tried to just like find real people in my life that I was thinking about, like, how would I find that person and where are they? And what messaging should we be using to get people to click on things? So we tested about a total of 12 different audiences. It was, and when I say like we were using like Google ads and whatnot, like we probably put $1,000 or $2,000 into this ahead of the campaign. So it wasn't like a huge budget by any means. So you can really like figure out a lot just with, even a few $100s. But we really wanted to see, like where are people clicking? And some of the things that we learned was that with the Google ads, like, targeting Chipotle at lunchtime actually wasn't a great idea. Like people are hungry, like they want to go eat a burrito. They're not about to like buy something that they can carry a burrito in. So they like that didn't work out very well. And then some of the other surprising things that we learned was that there was like a really big audience with gifting and parents. So we did some stuff around like holidays and just kind of testing out like campaign copy and whatnot with holidays. And that, that was like a huge thing. Like this is a really great gift product. But the surprising thing that came up during our ad testing was parents. Like I'm not a mom, so like I have no idea. Like it's just like wasn't the first thing that I thought of, but I don't know why. It's like such a amazingly colorful, like kid-friendly project. And so yeah, kids were an audience that kind of came out of this that I just completely missed when I was thinking about my target audiences ahead of time. And they continue to be one of the, like the largest drivers of traffic today. But some of the other ways that we use Google ads to help out was, just kind of figuring out like, what are the actual like words that we need to put in place? So we tested, a bunch of different, like messaging, like, is it the twistable, burrito elevator? Is it like burrito thermos? Is it, burrito pop? Like what's the actual like language that gets people to click on this? And how do we communicate the value of something that literally doesn't exist? So it's not like we're competing against a bunch of other search terms. So we use Google ads in that way. We still have, some Facebook campaigns and experiments that we put out. Today, we've kind of noticed that there is, I think like Facebook is converting slightly better than Google, although we're continuing to test those different channels and just kind of figure out like what our perfect jam is.
Awesome. Thank you. And so David, I know your team used, I think, the most traditional approach, just in the sense, I think people often think about list building with Facebook ads. I think that's something that's often talked about in the crowdfunding community nowadays. And I know you guys, were able to really get a lot of value from that pre-work. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about, some of the thinking and strategies that you guys used for Facebook advertising to build your list?
Yeah, sure. So actually, Argikit is really amazing tool in terms of how it is customizable and how people can use it to express their creativity in a very diverse, different way. So in our website, in our ads, in our social media, we communicated the product, what you can do with it, but we didn't communicate all the feature. We didn't communicate all the specifics. So it was like a teaser for people to make them think what this product could be or what this product could do. So this makes them like follow us, to subscribe, to know more. So we started to build like the community by like giving them some of the information, not all the information, and to start building this. So they follow us, they want to read more our messages, they want to follow our newsletters, they want to follow our VIP group, our social media. So this was one of our strategies that worked really well on how building the momentum. And I would say we did this at the beginning because you are building your product and at the same time you are building the community. So at the first you don't have a lot of information to share, but you just want to announce about your product. So this is how it started at the beginning, and we discovered that this was one of the most successful strategies that we selected.
Great. And in terms of I know you mentioned that Instagram was really important for you at the beginning, and then in terms of getting people into your email list, that Facebook ads was important for you. And I think if I recall correctly, you guys also did some work with testing of Facebook ads to kind of really hone in on your audience. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So actually, we did a lot of tests from, I would say at the beginning, we started like 50 different tests with different like target audience, different content, different copyright. And during the first couple of weeks, we decided which is the most successful one. So this is the first thing, and I think it's not only driving ads or creating ads on any platform, but it's also this ad will drive traffic. But when this traffic go to your page or to your website, how they will convert to a lead. So this is the whole question. Not only like running the ad and then you have the community.
Of course, no, of course, and I think that's a really important point, that an ad might buy you traffic, it might even buy you conversions, but it doesn't buy you a community. Like even if you get somebody on your list, like they're still not a community. I mean, I think it's what you do with it. It's how you keep them engaged. That's where the real value is. How do you build that affinity and that interest and that desire? Cool. So actually, that's actually the thing that I want to switch on to next, which is about this notion of like, how do you? So we've talked a lot about where you find people, how you guys have been got people to you know, sign up to your list or to join your to follow your page or whatnot. Now let's talk, like, what did you do to build, you know, to engage and to build anticipation so that you could get people to you know, be ready to ideally pledge for your product once you launch? You know, like what are the things that you do really around this building excitement and anticipation? So, you know, Madelin, why don't we start with you this time around?
Yeah, I think for us, a really big piece was folding people into the story of developing the product. We had I had just a couple, you know, small prototypes, and, you know, we'd done some stuff with 3D printing, you know, before the campaign. So during the campaign, we were still figuring out, like, you know, what the final form factor was and like which manufacturers we were using and, like, you know, all the colors and everything. So the product was literally like unfolding, you know, before and during and even after the campaign. So a huge piece of it was just like bringing people along with you on that journey, and pulling them into the piece of the story that they wouldn't necessarily otherwise get to see. And a lot of that was really fun. You know, like, people are kind of, you know, they have opinions about, you know, color selection and whatnot. And I learned so much just by like putting surveys out and asking people, you know, what they would want and how they would use this. So there was a lot of that. And then the other really big thing that we did was making sure that we had really great early bird specials. So making sure to incentivize people who were signing up for the waitlist and who were kind of engaging with you early on to back, you know, almost immediately, so that they could come in and get, like, you know, the best deals, or, like, you know, be that early backer and just kind of feel very proud about that. And so we did, you know, pretty much everything that we could with, you know, how we roll out, you know, who were saying, like, cool, we launched this too, right? Like, we sort of had like our close, like, community and early network that we, you know, teased, like, you know, a week or like a day in advance. We're like, we're launching tomorrow, like, go, like, check it out. Like, we've got early bird specials, like, tell your friends. And then from there, we kind of like went out and we're like, okay, cool. Like, for people who haven't been following us along, now it's your turn. You can go, you know, on the site and back it. And then, you know, you kind of go out from there. But yeah, it's really pulling people along the story with you and just kind of sharing that, like, behind the scenes process. I think gets really people excited.
Awesome, thank you. And so now, David, let's explore a little bit. I mean, I was actually following your campaign. I signed up for your list before you guys launched. So and I thought you guys did a pretty good job of, like, you know, using different ways to keep people engaged and the type of information that you share. I know you touched upon that a little bit earlier in some of your other messages, but would you mind, again, just kind of focusing on that a little bit? You know, once somebody signed up for your list, like, what did you guys do to get them even more engaged, to get them more excited about that launch?
Okay, sure. Okay, sure. So for any startup, I think when they need to understand that when people sign up for a product or for, like, a pre-launch product, these people, they not only want the product, but they are interested in your company or in the product for a lot of other reasons. So for example, I would say when we send, like, for example, when someone sign up, we send them, like, an email, a welcome email, and then we had a lot of reply for this welcome email, like, for example, like, asking, okay, we want to understand more about the product development, or we want to understand more or to see the iteration of your design process. We want to see more about the usage. Or we want to see more about what is happening inside the kitchen and the product development. So we had a lot of people who are, like, interested in, like, know more about the back end or behind the stage of the product. And this is how you can create a community, not only, like, selling them your product, but sharing with them your story. As Madelin and Nikki said, sharing your story or creating an ad, like Apple in the 80s. This is how you you engage people with your story, and it's like back and forth communication. So not on like sending a welcome email and then that's all. It's like make people reply to this email, and then you reply back to them, and then you open a conversation with them.
Awesome, awesome, and that's great. And so you know, Nikki, I'm just going to turn it over to you next. And I know you guys had a little bit of a different process than the other two teams that were kind of very open about what they were developing and sharing a lot about the development process. You guys took much more of an approach like, hey, we have something big that's coming December 2nd. We're not going to tell you what it is. So, you know, how did you guys manage to drive that interest and build anticipation while keeping things, you know, mostly hidden?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to why community is so important. So like David did, we about 6 months, so we launched in December, and we decided to really do this in June and July of that year. And so once we made our first prototype, we actually, you know, before we even planned our campaign or anything like that, we reached out to 20 or 30 of our, you know, biggest community members, and we shared photos, we shared videos of our product with them, asked them about our price point, our feature list, like, do they think this is the right thing to launch, etc. And all, you know, while we wanted to keep it a big secret, and it was like a big company initiative not to like spill the beans, you know, with these 20 to 30 community members, we basically trusted them not to spill the beans. We didn't like no NDA or nothing was signed. We were just like, hey, we're launching this. Please don't tell anyone. And thankfully no one did. And in fact, I think, you know, they ended up being, you know, even a small group of people who knew that something was coming, they began sort of then, like, without us doing anything, sort of like reinvigorating the community on their own. You know, they had like looking glasses before. So, you know, like all of a sudden, like there was a little bit more chatter on our Discord. And then people in October started like anticipating that something was coming. And obviously they did once we announced the welcome Sony letter. But yeah, I think, you know, I definitely think, you know, you definitely can't just send like one email. You have to like keep people engaged in multiple ways. Another thing we did was we identified sort of like key like thought leaders and like kind of artists and people that you know, artists and creators that our communities already loved, and kind of went up to them, and maybe 2 months before the campaign told us what we were planning to launch, and sort of like invited them to join us, and you know, we involved them, and a couple of their demos now are being shipped with the first demos that will be shipped out with Looking Glass Portrait. And so they, you know, they have huge communities on their own as well. So I think when people also see like communities overlap, when they see that they follow you, but also someone else they follow mentions you, you know, and this happens multiple times, obviously this you know, people are going to be like, okay, something is happening. What is it? And then I think, you know, for us, we sort of wanted to tease that this was something like super different from what we've done before, both in like price point and like form factor, without really saying it. So we definitely chose a thematic message to tease around, and this time around it was around people. And so, you know, the whole Looking Glass Portrait was around people, real or imagined. So, you know, we kind of took that messaging and wove it into like our current times as well. You know, you can't see each other, you miss each other. This is really going to be something that changes things. And yeah, so it's a mixture of a lot of things to, I think, keep people engaged. And definitely right now, we've moved a lot of our community onto Discord, and that's where a lot of that engagement is happening as well.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, no, sorry. Thank you for that. And I think what we'll do now, I just want to wrap up now, and so we can move to the Q&A. But before we do that, I just wanted to take a moment to thank all three of you for joining. And before we start accepting questions, where can people find, your work, both your, if you're interested in sharing personal Twitter handles as well, that's fine. But like, let's go through each of you and just like, where can people find out about each of your companies and each of your work? So David, why don't we start with you? Where can they find out more about RGKit and Argineering?
Okay, sure. Yeah, sure. So I think, okay, so they can find more on our Instagram page. So they will see all our use cases of the product, and on our website is argikit.com. So where they can see more about the product itself, and in the Instagram or in our website, in our website or Instagram, if they send on the contact form or like DM us, definitely I can get in touch with them.
Okay, great, awesome. And Madelin, where can they find out more about Burrito Pop?
Yes, if you go to our website, burritopop.com, that's where you can find our product and everything about it. Our Twitter is @BurritoPop, and I think Instagram is @GetBurritoPop. Get that one. And my personal Twitter is @MadW, MADW. So feel free to follow along.
Awesome. And Nikki, what about for your team?
Yeah, I posted it on the chat as well. But
awesome.
It is look.glass/portrait easy. We try to snag that look.glass short link as early as possible.
That's great.
Makes our lives
cool.
a lot easier. And then on Twitter, it's @LKG Glass. Looking Glass Factory has not responded to my requests. And yeah, if you want to follow me personally, it's Nikki, NIKKI.CCCC 5 C's.
Awesome. Cool. So let's now go through the question. I'm just going to go from the top. I think, if there are any that we've already answered or that it can be easily answered with a typed answer, I'll probably skip those. But how much time do you recommend is needed for community building? Is there some metric to get to the launch date? My take is as much, you should give yourself as much as possible time for community building. It's something that takes usually in that spans of a few months, not weeks. I don't know if any of our panelists have any additional kind of thoughts that they'd like to add around, how much time. My question is, like, if you were to do this again, how much time would you want to give yourself to get that in order? I think that might be a way to phrase that question for all of you.
Good question. I'm happy to go first on this one.
Yeah.
So this is something that I didn't know ahead of time, and I was definitely almost impulsively launched a Kickstarter without telling anybody about it beforehand, which do not do that. So what I would recommend is somewhere between 3 and 6 months, minimum. There's quite a lot, once you get to the 3-month mark, it's sort of countdown, and there's just so much that you need to do to get it over the finish line with putting your campaign together. So 3 months at the very, very minimum. But I would say right around 6 months is a good amount of time. Definitely start kind of mentally preparing and putting feelers out there and getting the word out there ahead of time if you can. But yeah, 3 to 6 months is perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, and I don't think you all three of you need to answer these. I think I'll throw these. One of you guys can tackle it. If many of you want to tackle any of these questions, that is totally fine. I think the next one is, how can you build community with no money at all? I think this is a tough one. I think it's one of those things where you just need a lot of time. I think you need to give yourself more time to engage over time, and it is difficult because there are some of the testing work that we heard, both David and that Madelin did, that can really help you focus in on who your target audience really is. That if you really have no money at all to invest, that can be really tough. That's some initial thoughts. I don't know if any of you have some more thoughts from your experience that you'd want to share. Because I think all of you did use money. Yeah.
I think we were probably the lowest budget campaign of all of us here. So this was like completely like personal, like project, like very, like side project kind of thing. So we didn't spend that much money on the actual community building. The place where we spent money was on the product development and on, sort of like the branding and design and whatnot. But the product development and manufacturing was like by far the most expensive. But on community, most of that was, we didn't spend anything. And a lot of that is just like, you gotta just do it. Like you gotta go out there and you gotta be scrappy and you gotta talk to people and you gotta be on every single channel all the time and like engaging with people just as much as you can kind of like be out there in the world and just genuinely connecting with people is going to be the key there. And you can absolutely do that with zero budget. And it's oftentimes like the most effective way, like David said earlier, like Facebook ads is not the way to build a community. You have to just be where people are.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, I think, Madelin, with your example, this is your product is something you worked on for 8 years. I know that you really kind of were more public with it and really pushing it out more publicly in the last year of its before bringing it to market, but it was really something that was percolating for a long time.
Yes, very, very long time.
I wanted to jump in and say, and this is something I completely forgot, but definitely look into other campaigns who you think might have matching audiences. So one of like our buddy campaigns was the OpenCV like OAKD AI kit, and just because we're in the same communities, our founder knew the founder of that campaign, who also did really well, and we just did like early on we figured out, okay, like how can we work? We can't just like mention each other, right? I think that's a little too off to say that, oh, in the next update I'll send, if you write about me, I'll write about you. I don't think that's as authentic as it can be. And so what we had them do is like, we're like, hey, send us some content that your camera is like taking, like maybe we can put into a looking glass portrait, we'll film it for you, like see how, like if you like it, like if you do, like please share it with your backers as well. And what that does immediately is you all of a sudden have a bunch of people who are already signed up to the platform, who like, they're like, oh, okay, like, one of the hurdles is when you're backing something is you have to like then like sign up for the platform and before you transact. So having them a big population of people who are already on it to receive that is amazing. So yeah, that's definitely I would definitely suggest doing that.
And Nikki, I think that point's hit on the when we started talking, or before we started talking, when I was talking about the different communities, like communities at large versus like when we talk about the community from the perspective of a project, like you're talking there about like the importance for you to be part of these larger communities as well. Like if you're doing a product, that product inhabits some larger community of people who are interested in something, and like, so be part of that community, because it's not just about like the community that you're trying to build around what you're doing, but it's also about what is the community that you're contributing to and that you're part of, and that has that whose interest aligns with the work that you're doing around
Yeah, like early on we definitely we put together like a persona list, and we said if like anyone who buys a portrait will also own these things, and like we identified like they will also own like X, Y, and Z, and so we definitely try to find places where those people were in already.
Awesome. And so let's move on to I'm going to skip the next one. We'll try to get to it later. I think it's from the same, just so we don't, we kind of spread our answers to different attendees, and then we can go back to that one if possible. I see Marcio was asking if anybody has had experience using LinkedIn as a tool for community building, around a product, because his specific product is a product related to teaching engineering. And so has a very specific audience and professional use cases. So do any of you have experience? I personally haven't heard of much experience in a community building from like a bigger sense. I've heard more about people talking about their like reaching out, like finding press contacts, like that type of professional, finding that type of professional contacts and reaching out to those type of professional contacts around a project. I've definitely heard about that. I haven't heard as much people doing work. It's not to say that it can't be done or it's not a powerful tool for that. I just haven't heard of it very much. But
yeah, LinkedIn is great if you're doing like more B2B outreach for things, or looking for press folks, or you know, if I chatted with other you know, Kickstarter people and they're like, look on my LinkedIn for all the press people, you know, that I've like chatted with. But otherwise, you know, posting about events is really good. I think, Julia, you've done that for this talk as well. But there's not much in terms of community there. It's mostly finding B2B contacts and, you know, posting about events and whatnot.
awesome.
Yeah, and I would say that I see less sort of brand presence over, I think, you know, if you do want to be in a space where you're teaching engineering, I would focus on building up your own LinkedIn presence as a thought leader. Because I think that is sort of the angle that really thrives on LinkedIn, is like when you become like a trusted authority. And then, so, you know, following that, if you do happen to launch something, then people are like, oh, okay, like I'll trust you because I've trusted you for a very long time.
Awesome. I'm gonna, Ivan, I'm gonna skip your question for now because it's very specific to your project, and I'd rather try to answer some more that are more broad while we have the panelists. We will answer any questions that are not answered here. I'll in a follow-up email where we'll answer any unanswered questions. But let's go down to Nayan's question. And I'm sorry, Nayan, if I'm mispronouncing your name, please forgive me. So the question is, how do you keep your audience engaged long-term on social media and continue to build an audience post crowdfunding? So I think there's two elements there. Let's pick the first one. You know, how do you keep your audience engaged over the long term on social media? That's one that I don't have much expertise on, so I'm going to turn it to our panelists to see if any of them can give a good answer to this or a good perspective. Is anybody willing to take a jump?
Yeah, I mean, so let me think about this in a few ways. I think, you know, just I think starting like conversations are good, and just engaging in conversations. I think that's what sort of really worked. I mean, obviously right now, like we also have a challenge where, and I'm sure a lot of people will too, is right after your campaign, there's kind of a lull because no one's really buying anything anymore, and they kind of have to then wait until they get their product, you know, however long they have to wait for it. So, you know, for us right now, it's trying to figure out like what kind of, I'm calling it while you wait content. So in our case, it's like while you're waiting for your looking glass, like I'm trying to figure out how to get our community like creating first. Maybe they can't like convert them into holograms yet, but I can get them to take some photos and maybe submit them, and maybe I'll put it in my looking glass and I'll film it back for them. So I think, you know, doing things like that is definitely good to do.
Awesome. Madelin, do you have anything to add? I thought you were going to.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I was going to say, definitely Nikki sort of touched on, but it's basically just continuing to engage in the conversation and, you know, making sure to like retweet things and like share things that other people are posting and just kind of really driving up that like user generated engagement. But yeah, I think it's really just, you know, continuing to be there, like posting things and being active. Like you kind of have to keep it alive. It's like a little garden that you have to like, you know, make sure to water and tend to and whatnot. So I would just, you know, continue to put energy into it and it will, you know, come back out.
Awesome. And I see that. I think Nikki, you even when you're answering this question, touched on the second part of the question as well, which was how do you keep that engagement going long term after you fund it even. So I think we can let's push on to the next question. Thank you, Madelin and Nikki for that. And then Minsu is asking, how big was PR for driving campaign traffic compared to the community you built? I will let the panelists answer this as well, but I will tell you that in general, the traffic from community tends to be way higher, not just the traffic, but actually the number of pledges you get, because that traffic is much more qualified as well. So as a general rule, that traffic tends to be considerably more powerful. Of course, there are exceptions to that. So I'd love to hear from all of you, what was your experiences?
Yeah, I'm happy to go in on this one a little bit. So press is something that I haven't had much experience with in my life. My background's in software engineering, so this is all new to me. Yeah, it was really interesting. I'd say, yeah, definitely what you said, Julia, so like sort of given the percentages of conversions, like the people who came directly from our community were like more highly likely to convert and to actually purchase things and, sort of engage with us. But we did get quite a lot of traffic from press. And I think it did actually drive, just a number of conversions and purchases for us. We worked with a like PR strategist, very, very small budget. Again, like it was like a couple $1,000s or something, but we wound up getting, like 15 major like press hits. Like one of our articles landed like Yahoo News. Like I didn't know Yahoo News existed, but like we got, like almost 10,000 views that day on our Kickstarter campaign. And it was just totally wild. So it's something that, it's definitely not to be discounted, but it's not the conversion rate is not as high as your direct community.
Yeah. Oh, David, yeah, go on, David.
Yeah, so like Madelin said, press helped us to push our pledges during our Kickstarter, but we started by building community. And when we built the community and we had like a successful start for the Kickstarter, then the press was like, they're writing about us without investing in the press or without like paying for the press. And we had a lot of press from like the most top magazines in our industry, like Gizmodo Inc. magazine or Petapixel for videographers. So PR now they give like the trust, or it's like a sign of trust, like this and this and that they are talking about us and they're like highlighting our feature for our product. So this will give more trust for your community, but you need to build the community and then to have the press, not the other way around.
No, that's great. I know we have very little time left, probably just for one more question. Let's take Creighton's question, but before we do that, I just want to remind everyone, we will follow up after this event with any in our post event email in the next few days, where we'll answer all the other questions that we didn't get to here. So fear not if your question didn't get answered live. We will get you some answers. So Creighton's question about Instagram. Instagram is so heavily used these days, but it's so hard to know who is actually clicking through and who's just scrolling by. How do you guys deal with this? David, I think you're the one who used Instagram most here. Is this something that you guys dealt with in a specific way? Is that something that you guys thought about?
So I would say, okay, there is two things. The first one is, as I said, we had a team who were like following everyone, or like studying the profile of people who follow our Instagram account and make sure that we are targeting the right people. And the second thing was our target was when someone comment on our Instagram, how we can make this comment like a 10 or 20 lines of comments back and forth. And I think by building this was like someone who triggered the algorithm of Instagram to have more specific target users, or to specify which are our most engaging users.
Awesome. No, that's super interesting. All right, and I think with that answer, I want to thank our panelists again for joining us today. It's been really awesome to get this chance to speak with all of you and have all of you share about the wisdom that you've accrued over the last years, or just as you've developed your products and build community around preparing to launch them. So, I think now we will switch gears. For anyone who wants to hang out, we will share a little bit more about Launch Studio. But I think we can say goodbye to our panelists, and I think we have a lot of students here on board too. And thank you for all the Launch Studio students that also joined us, and everyone else. We appreciate that you carved out 90 minutes of your day to hang out with us and talk about community.
Thanks, Julia, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Right. Yes, Happy New
Thank
Year.
you.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye.